session. This is the 68th edition, and as we prepare for the new year, I decided to look more for topics that's going to align more with, well, strategically positioning yourself for the coming year. And in fact, for today's own, I decided not to just limit it to the coming year, but for the future. So the title of today's session is Staying Relevant and Skilled for the Future. So that's the session. If you have questions, you can always ask. You don't need to even signal. Just, we are not so many, so you can always just unmute yourself, interrupt me, and ask. That's the advantage of having a small group as we have today. So if you have any question or contribution, not just questions, also contribution, opinion, something you've seen that you think will benefit the house in knowing, even for me, most of what I'm going to talk about are a mixture of my own experience and research I did. So I don't know it all. I don't know many things. So you also will know some things, seen some things that you can share with the general audience, not just those of us here, but those who watch the recording. So just a quick word about the sponsors. FMI Institute is one of our sponsors, and then there is a 40% discount code, which you can always reach out to me if you cannot copy it out from the screen, and you'll be able to take the exams at a 40% discount using this code. So I'm going to move on. Then there is also UrBizEdge, my company, and we are the ones powering this. We've been doing this since, I think, mid of last year. So if you're interested in any training, Excel, financial modeling, Power BI, Python for data analysis, we'll be glad if you come to us. And as you are benefiting from this, we do a lot more even for those who do our trainings. We try to be there for them. We try to give much more than just a 2 days or 3 days class. We always try to stay with them till they master what they've learned. So to the main thing. In fact, I wrote that everyone should read this. Maybe I will try and do a small paraphrasing, but I'm going to share the link again so that, and even the slides. So I will share all the links to all what. Let me just do that right now. Some people, okay, great. So I hope you can see the chat box. So I'm resharing the links to this slide, and more importantly, the link to this report by PwC that it's on. I found it really insightful, as much as I would want to talk about what I've done rather than trying to sell PwC, but when there is value, it's best to just share it as it is and to reference where you've gotten it. So if you read this, I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's kind of general. It's beyond the finance domain I'm trying to focus on. But I found it also very, very instructive. I'm not done reading it, but I know that for me to find it valuable, I'm sure a lot of other people too will find it valuable. Let me see if I can take you through a bit of what is in, let me check my time. I think I should be able to do 10 minutes to let you see what's inside. So maybe that will spur you on to also wanting to read it. So I can't remember, I do not know the year they did this, but the focus is what's going to be the big trend going into year 2030. Maybe that's for the next 10 years. And it's about 42 pages. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of the things that I found really amazing and eye-opening what they've done. And they did it from a global perspective. So it wasn't like they were focusing on just one aspect of the world. In fact, at the end, when they wrote all the people who contributed, it was across all their global offices. So it's kind of quite robust. And let me take you through to the aspects that I found really, really amazing, So there's this part, though the second part of the quote is what I really like, but I'll read the entire thing. So what should we tell our children? That to stay ahead, you need to focus on your ability to continuously adapt, engage with others in that process, and most importantly, retain your core sense of identity and values. For students, it's not just about acquiring knowledge, but about how to learn. For the rest of us, we should remember that intellectual complacency is not our friend, and that learning not just new things, but new ways of thinking is a long life or is a lifelong endeavor. So I really like the closing parts. And let me go again to the other things that I liked, or should I say, I found really instructive. Uh, I'm cherry picking anyway. So there's this part on digital and artificial intelligence. They were not so much in trying to say what your stance should be in, but the focus is on that there are two divides. There are those who want it to be subdued in terms of it shouldn't be positioned as something to take away jobs, and then there will now be this new trend of made by me. People will now start taking prestige in that. This was we went to a restaurant that was we were served by humans, not robots. And then there's the trend of also there will be things where robots will take charge of. But the key thing I want everyone to just notice is that everybody see it as something that will happen. People might be off by the timing, but artificial intelligence, robots, digital intelligence, and all of those things are happening and are going to become mainstream. They have been happening for long, but now they're going to just creep in from behind. And the way Excel and software for accounting kind of overturned everything. That's the way this will happen, such that any company that just wants to remain relevant will not have a choice but to begin to incorporate these in their processes. And it will just, even if they don't have the competency, they would buy it. It will become something like as a service where you're just paying and somebody else is rendering the service. So why am I trying to pause at this space? It's just to let you know that you don't have to be the people creating it, but you should not be unaware of what is happening in that space. I'm not saying you should all become experts at artificial intelligence or begin to spend more time on this than you should on your core aspect of career, but be aware, read about what's happening there, read about what the trend is, read about the pros, the cons, and just be aware. That's my own takeaway from this part. You can read more as we go on, but then I'm going to again, they divided the world into 4 major trends. There are those who is all innovation, the red world. There's the blue world where it's about size, the way Google, Microsoft, and some companies, because of their size, they are the one laying down the rules. They are acquiring everybody else. There's a yellow world where people want to be more responsible, where crowdfunding, that people touch becomes key. And it is a green world where it's all about sustainability, environment. So it's all about for you where your industry is. If you work in an innovative space where it's all about innovation, you're ahead of the policies of regulation, then in that case your strategy is going to be slightly different from someone who works with, say, a corporate, and maybe you work with one of the largest company in that space. Maybe you work with a traditional oil and gas company. Maybe you work with, in those spaces, it's not about, in fact, if the regulation is fuzzy, they don't go in the weight. They try to help the regulator set things up before they now go in. So things will be different, for people who work across. So we can all be doing the same role, but depending on where we work, you want to imbibe the culture that will make your career move forward, in that your space. So that's what I found about this. Again, you could read it yourself. I'm going to, again, quickly move on to something else I found interesting. And this is one that maybe for those of us who, I'm more in the entrepreneurial space, so this might not be so big a deal for me. But for those of us who are looking to position ourselves career-wise, in a very visible and positive light, then you have to be aware that nowadays, for big companies, or well, going into the future, a large chunk of recruitment, processing, head hunting is being powered by AI. So you want to know how to redo your CVs, your profiles, your social media presence, such that you are favorably, displayed, like you are taking positive advantage. So it's not working against you, but it's even making your profile look better. Let me use that word. So that's one thing I want you to be aware from this, that, going into the future, recruitment, AI is beginning to play a big role in that. And so I'm going to quickly go to other things I found really cool. This is all about those different categories of organizations: green world, red world, blue world, yellow world. Well, the good thing is some of these thoughts are also what in my research, I put into my presentation. So don't worry too much that I'm skipping a lot of things, because I just wanted you to know that this is important for you to read. I'm going back right into my own presentation where I have my own well-gathered thoughts together for everyone in this space, even if you're not in the finance space, but I had much more people in the finance space in mind. So this is another key thing, can be controversial, but like I said, this is made up of my own experiences and research that I did. So going into the future, I think it is riskier to be a generalist. What do I mean by a generalist? So a generalist is someone who you are, it's a kind of subjective term these days, because what might be generalist to someone can be specialist to another person. But the truth is, the more you want to spread your knowledge across multiple tools, multiple industries, multiple competencies, the more you are tilting to the generalist. So think about it as a continuum. Yes, it might be difficult for one to say, you know what, I'm not going to try to know any other thing. I'm just going to pick a very, very narrow niche, and then that's all. Anything that is outside of that niche, I take it out. I don't think that would be a very wise decision. But also, too, you don't want to be like, oh, every new thing you want to learn it. Everything everybody's doing, you want to have, take training on this, take training on that, do certifications on this, do certifications on that. Keep spreading yourself thin. Then you are going far into the generalist direction. So this is what I'm trying to portray here, right? I know this is a mixture. It's both for companies and individual, but we all work within a company. So it's, as it affects a company, also it affects the individuals. And more specifically, this helped me to bring together also the company and individual aspect. So if you look at the way I have this structured, so let's start from this side. I'm going to start from here. So the generalist is the green line. So this green line here, that's up and down, is a generalist, right? So what happens is, for a generalist, if you are going to be an entrepreneur, a consultant, then you will want, if you know that you like learning a lot of things, or you're already tilting in the generalist direction, you will get more value from working in an early stage company, a company where they need someone who is like who can put on the multiple hats, someone who can juggle a lot of things, someone who is experienced in a lot of things, who can be both an accountant, a corporate finance, where you can juggle a lot of roles. You could even be part of IT audit, and the more the skills you have, the better you are valued in an early stage, in a startup, in an early stage company, right? So you'll see that you shine. Your skills are going to just make you like an amazing person, an amazing resource, someone that they will not want to let go of. And if you want to start your own company to your own consulting firm, it's something that, depending, yeah, but generally it's something you will find useful. The fact that you could juggle a lot of things is going to make life bearable. Let me use that word. Not really easy, but at least you have it easier than someone who will have to pay people for every other thing apart from the very narrow thing he could do. So for early stage company, whether yours or another company, as a generalist, you will shine better than a specialist. A specialist is going to struggle, because even the knowledge he has, he might not be able to apply to that depth of knowledge he has while he's, in a very unstructured environment where the company is just trying to get its feet on the ground. So, but the moment the company things take off, and the company keeps growing and expanding, and things are getting better, the value of the generalist begins to drop. So they no longer will need a generalist, not just because of the fact that you don't know too much about everything, but no, it's about the fact that one person, there's a limit to how much one person can do. Even if you are as good as all the specialists they go to hire, you can't do too many things at once. At some point, you start dropping the ball. So they will need to want to hire that thing that only you are doing. They might need to split it into like five other roles, and then have people, preferably now specialists, because it might be cheaper, and then the profile will come stronger than the generalist anyway. If you wanted someone who is an account receivable, you would rather want to hire someone who does what he's been doing for the last couple of years than someone who has been doing more than that. Maybe you just feel more confident. So that's just the way it is. So as the company keeps growing, the specialists begin to get more relevance, and then as the company becomes really established, then the generalist suffers a lot. So at that point, it's either as a generalist you're a manager, but then even if you're a manager, I tell you, the way finance, the way all these our white collar job roles are changing, you will struggle to keep up. You will become a drag at some point on the team, except if you are part of the founders, where you are a necessary drag. They can't kick you out because you are part of the founding team. But if you are not, at some point management will begin to want to get people who are more in tune with the high-end aspect of that specialist role. So you start having roles that are really, really specialized: chief data officer, chief people officer, chief, financial. Even for the CFO, they will still want someone who maybe, well, let me not drag it too long, but the key thing I'm trying to bring out of this is that if you want to be a generalist, if that's where your career is already, in the ballpark of, then you need to know that you will struggle more than the specialists to command that prestige, high salary, and great attention, especially to will command in a very established company. And then for a company that is expanding really fast, and if you are started with the company before the expansion, you start noticing that your value begins to drop. So it's a matter of if you are okay with it. If you're okay with it, so people who understand this, what they do is when they get in early, they try to be part of management. They try to be part of the founders. So that way they become necessary, even when their skills are looking kind of not a perfect fit, but now you are part of the owner, so you can't be kicked out. You become managers, become people who are supervising others, right? But if you always try to not be part of the founding team, not to be part of the management, you just want to be like a consultant or somebody one leg in, one leg out. And yes, they'll value you, they're overworking you at the beginning. You look like if you don't show up one week, everything's going to crumble. But the truth is, as the company keeps growing, you'll be wondering if it was the same company and it's the same you. So you don't want to, have a strategy that well favors you in the early stage, but as the company grows, you lose relevance, and then you don't have anything to have as a leverage. So that's one thing you want to be aware of. And if you're a specialist, just forget about trying to get into early stage companies. Otherwise, they won't be able to afford you. They would not even be able to understand what value you are bringing in. You're going to always be in friction with others because they will always see the generalist as more valuable. You want to do one third of what somebody else is doing. Nobody's going to be happy with that, and you are trying to ask for a great amount of money. So the truth is, if you're a specialist, so back to what is even my recommendation. The truth is, I would say you should try to be a specialist. Why? You look at the apart from even the relevance part, look at the growth. I'm talking about growth in terms of your career. You Imagine that you're someone who knows how to use SAP, Sage, you know how to use like 7 different accounting enterprise tools, right? The more they are improving those things, the more struggle you will have in catching up. So the way you will be able to grow will be too tumultuous, like too stressful compared to someone who is a specialist. So a specialist is able to grow faster, able to follow the trend, contribute more, able to get more value, for the company they work in than you who need to keep abreast of too many things. So that's my own reason why I think as a specialist you make more. You have more value going into the future because the technology space is fast paced. You can never keep up to speed if you remain a generalist. So that's my own advice. I don't know if any other person has a contribution or a different opinion or something to say on this particular part before I move on to my next slide. Okay. So no contribution, no opinion. Okay, so I move on. At least you have the slides. Those just joining, let me reshare the slides. So if you're just joining, I'm resharing the slide so you can always download and.
Okay, Michael.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Michael. How you doing? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just add something. Is really strange because my cousin and I were having a similar conversation like yesterday or so.
Okay.
Although he was towing more towards the line of that one should be a generalist, then one can be like being like managerial roles and just oversee what is going on. I was towing more towards the line of specialist. That okay, well, I want to build more skills. I want to even if I have to relocate or move to another country, I still want to to be able to fall back on those skills. So yeah, so I think it's an interesting conversation, but I think it really depends on where one sees himself. But I think the advantage of the specialist is you're able to keep more in tune with the existing maybe technologies, and you can always be valuable. Of course, you are limited to maybe large scale companies, but that could be a plus as well because for one's career.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. And yeah, so that's also what I try to depict in this image. Both have advantages, but I think it's easier. The specialists have it easier by my own thinking because let me give as an example of myself practically, which is part of the things I'm going to say in the next slide. So nowadays, having a plurality of experience, when I say plurality in terms of geographical exposure, is also a big plus. The more you can say you worked in a company that is here or that has a presence in like multiple countries, the more people take you seriously, the less they begin to see you as someone who is less valuable than somebody else who has maybe smaller years of experience, but because he has, worked across different countries, is also now seen as someone that they should pick over you. So why am I even bringing this up right now? I will still go to it in the next slide. Is that if you're a generalist, it's very difficult for you to be able to jump to have to get jobs neutral. Okay, let me give an example. If they want to hire a GM for a general manager role, which by the title of the word, you need a generalist anyway. For someone who is a generalist, because GM is more of a generalist role, for that kind of role, they will look for more of local exposure. Oh, how well are you in tune with the local market environment? There's a whole lot of things that makes it difficult for you who are in Nigeria here to be able to get a generalist role in US, in Canada, in UK, because the very term generalist means that, well, they expect you to not just know the technical role, maybe to some extent, but also know the environment. There's a lot more requirement that goes beyond the technical aspect of, or a very narrow technical aspect. But now, as a specialist, so for me now, on some of the platforms that I am able to work with clients in Canada, in US, I don't even say I make myself very narrow. Like I say, I'm just into financial modeling. I pick a very narrow field. I deliberately let go of every other thing. So when you read my profile, all that comes into your mind is this is your guide to go to when you have something to do with maybe financial modeling. And so because of that, any role that I'm applying for, it's very difficult for you to discard my competence or my relevance. When you're even comparing me with somebody who is in the US, I still come across as a very strong candidate. Why? Because the role, the technical aspect of the role is universal. You can't say because you're in US, you know it more than me that I'm in Nigeria here. But if it's a generalist role, then someone will be thinking, oh, we want somebody who has a more knowledge of the US market. So that's another thing that plays in favor of the specialist. So I'm going to just move on to my next slide. But generally, I think, if you're a specialist, your risk is less. You're getting more growth and income and all of that. I think is easier than if you decide to be a generalist. Then this is another part that most both those of us in this finance space, we struggle with. Some even want to run away from it, but I'll tell you that please don't run away from it. It's better you keep struggling with it than to not even be in the game at all. So learn a programming language, and there are three things. Forget about why. I'm not even going to want to spend too much time on why, because the truth is, if you are still asking the question why, I think I think you are really, really way behind. Maybe you've been how do they say it when they say someone is not aware? Maybe you've been living under a rock. But just get beyond the why question. Just take it as a given that going into the future, it's not that if you don't have a programming language, you can't go far or whatsoever. It's just what I'm just saying is that for you to be relevant into the future, the trend that is going into the future, this is a very valid concern. It's something that you want to have in your corner. You don't, whether you use it strategically for your career or not, is a different ball game. But know that you have this in your corner is something that you should, because the way the trend is going right now, I even see people who are 60 years old, 65 years old in Canada and US, and they're learning Python. They are like, I'm in Microsoft MVP, and in the Excel community, we have a lot of very old folks because, Excel has been around since 1983 or 85. And suddenly in one of the conversations, they were talking about their learning plan for next year. And a lot of them are saying they're learning Python. They are struggling with it, but they are making it a big deal. And the reason is because what is going to, the thing that is going to cause you problem in future career-wise is not the things that you didn't even see coming at all, or things that that there was no way you could have prepared for. It is those things that you think it's so insignificant, something that you think I don't see any use to it. Those are the things that give you the most trouble in future, kind of. So, as it is right now, it is obvious from the company perspective, from the productivity perspective, that citizenship development, ability to think like a programmer, ability to do some things yourself, ability to be able to even interact with whatsoever software or robot or whatsoever that will become a mainstay in the corporate space is a very important skill. So you don't want to be someone who is newbie, who has zero knowledge, who has not even given it a try. So now, in choosing a programming language, three things I consider important. Number one is pick one that is relevant today and tomorrow. VBA is relevant today. I don't see VBA as relevant tomorrow. So if I'm learning a programming language, I will not pick Visual Basic for application. Yes, we use it to automate Excel. I even make money from VBA more than any other programming language. And I still did a project for a very large oil and gas company, and it was VBA, and they paid a lot of money. I think the rate was like, was it $65 per hour, and it was a lot of money ultimately that I made from it. But the truth is, yes, it's relevant today, but tomorrow it's not going to be as relevant as it is today. So if you are learning right now, for the future, for you to be able to be relevant into the future, I will say, VBA does not take the relevance for tomorrow. Then, so relevant today, relevant tomorrow. I'm going to talk about specific ones later. Let's go about the characteristics. Number 2, something you will use regularly. You see, they say your most expensive clothes is not the one you paid the most money for. It's the one you bought and never used. So your most expensive shoes, your most expensive whatever you have is the one you don't use. It doesn't matter how much you paid, right? As long as you don't use it, has become really expensive. It's an expense that you could have just avoided. So the same thing too with programming language. It's not about the difficulty in itself, because the truth is all of them are difficult. Some are more difficult in the beginning than the other, but in the end, all of them are equally difficult. The one that is simple at the beginning, you will face it in the end. The one that is hard at the beginning, just know that, just take solace in the fact that all of them are still ultimately going to be as hard as the one you are doing. So I don't think you should be looking much more for which one is super easy, which one is, but rather looking much more at, okay, which one is relevant today and tomorrow, and then that I'm going to start using right from today, that I'm going to be able to apply in my work. So a lot of finance people think they can apply Python. That's one vibe I get from those in the finance space. I see them able to look at some of the things they do. Maybe is it to go and scrape exchange rate from a website, maybe to automate some contacting someone, some report. So Python seems to be something that I've seen finance people already show as valuable in their day-to-day work. Okay. I also know that JavaScript is super important. Like for me, if you use Excel a lot like I do, you can program Excel, you can write your VBA with JavaScript, you can write programs that will automate your data analysis with JavaScript. So, and if you are also doing Power BI and you want to go into the programming side, JavaScript is also going to be something you will find valuable. So, for me, Python and JavaScript are two that I am, when I say new, things that are VBA I know already. Not that I'm super expert at it, but there is no project I get on VBA that I cannot do. Is whatever I have issue with, I know how to go about my way of fixing it. But Python, JavaScript, these are now like the next frontier where I'm beginning to, I use them, but then I can't say I use them as much as I use VBA. So it's to now get to that level where if I have something to do, I feel as comfortable doing them in Python and JavaScript as I feel in VBA. Then industry loved, right? You want to use something that the industry love. When I say industry love, many of us work with companies. It's not like you own your own company. So it doesn't make sense if you know something and then everybody undervalues what you know. Why? Because it's not that loved in the industry. So you also want to consider that what you are learning, is this something that you will not have to be spending too much energy trying to prove to people that it's valuable. You want something that when you just put it on your CV, everybody just appreciates it instantly. Not that they're like, well, go blank and like, what's this? So you don't want to be the odd one out. You don't want to be the one where someone else is doing like what you can do. Someone else can use another tool that everybody's aware of, and then because they are not aware of the tool you use, they just ignore your profile, or you are just not getting as much opportunities as you would have gotten if you had picked something in the industry love. So you want to also check out what is loved in the industry. So if you are someone who you want to play in the blockchain space, because blockchain is big in the finance space, I forgot to add it as its own category here, but again, if you are here and you're in the finance space, start reading up on blockchain, start taking courses. Don't worry if the thing is going above your head. just stay in there and be aware of blockchain. And I would say try to be able to, like, for me, I took a course on how to even build a blockchain. Not that I understand it too much, but the truth is that again, that's another big trend. It's something that whatever time you spend there is time well spent. So try to take a course on blockchain, do a bit of minor programming, just understand. And they are easy to do. That's the thing. It's just that because they require an ecosystem that might not be possible in your current company or your current situation, you will know how to do them and not be able to apply it in your work. But still, that is good. It's better than not being aware. So I'm going to move on to the next thing in the slide. This is something that most people don't think of until they have entered a manager role or a management position. Don't be that person where it's when you start looking like way behind, where, how do I put it now, where it's like you're the only one who is not aware of things. You're always the last to know. That's when you start appreciating the value of attending conferences, global conferences. Don't be that person. No matter where you are in your career ladder now, start incorporating it into your learning plan, especially for next year. Look for conferences that speak to your space and the space you want to be in and attend. Many conferences are free. Some are very cheap. So it's not a matter of cost nowadays, it's just a matter of deliberate efforts. So attend global conferences. Even for me, I struggle to make out the time, but I know the value. You might be like, most of what they will say might be too general, you might want to say, oh, you know what you want, and you want to take a course that will speak directly to what you want. Yes, trainings is something else. Don't think of trainings as an alternative to conference. Conferences serve three main purposes. Number one is they help you to be even aware of who is who in the space are. So you are aware of who are the thought leaders, and not just aware of who the thought leaders are, but also what their thinking process, because they are the ones, those thought leaders are the ones who are setting the roadmap for the industries generally. So you don't want to be the person who doesn't know where the ball is going to be. That's what conferences allow you to do. You get to hear from the old and fading, so you get to know what is big right now, and then you get to hear from the new and upcoming. So you get to see what's the new trend, what everybody's talking about right now. They won't talk deeply, but just being aware is good enough for you to now start doing your extra work. And then number three is that it can be an opportunity to network. So you're beginning to see some consistent faces, and if it's those physical conferences, you get to meet people, and then over time you get to meet same set of people here and there, and jobs, opportunities, learning opportunities also come from there. So attend global conferences, and there's an emphasis on global. Don't just the space we are in right now. The whole world is a global world, yes, but the space we are in right now, uh, you'll be surprised that the next tool your company is going to install, or the next thing they're going to spend money on, next enterprise tool they will spend money on, might be something that somebody from Australia or from one remote end of the world just emailed them about, emailed the management about and talked about it in a very amazing way with, what they call them, those uh, with case studies and success stories, and your company will just buy into it. And then you'll be like, they're talking about it and you're hearing about it for the first time. Why? Because you've always been attending local conferences. So you've not been attending global, you didn't even know about it too. Don't be that kind of person. So the world is global, is now small, that your management get to be aware of things that you might not be aware, because there are people who are always scouting management email and emailing them, from around the world. So you'll be surprised that they can forward you something and you'll be like, how did my MD get to know about this? So you don't want to be behind the curve. Then this is another strategic thing. I know most of us in the finance space, we are used to counting the cost. So you sometimes don't see it valuable to volunteer or even to do a freelance where you look at it, you're already stressed at work. Why will you want to go and do an extra work outside of work for maybe small money? The truth is, the globally that are attached to this, remember what I said about your value, your years of experience nowadays has a peak. The difference between someone with 14 years of experience and 24 years of experience is no longer 10 years, right? Most companies look at those years of experience as the same. Because anyway, whatever you will have 20 years of experience on, it's something that must have been existing for 20 years or more, right? And most of the things that are now in use right now, not many of them have been existing for up to 20 years. So nobody is looking for a Methuselah kind of experienced person anymore. Rather, they're looking for plurality. That's your 4 years experience, your 5 years experience. How well has it been spread? Has it always been in just one particular industry, one location? Yes, we might not be able to control the industry as much because, again, I don't think it's nice to be changing jobs too often. I know that these days, the new guys coming out of university, that's what they aim at. They don't want to be somewhere more than 1 year. I don't know, maybe it works out for them. But the truth is, you can always get the plurality via freelancing. You can volunteer, you can join UN volunteers, UN online volunteers. There's always NGOs, companies who need a finance experience, something that all NGOs need that they sometimes cannot afford, or they will always rush out when they get somebody who has that experience. So you can use that as an opportunity to have some work experience in a very far away country, in a very far away market. And then there are other platforms too. So let's even forget about volunteer. Volunteer is a worst case scenario. It's becoming difficult for you to get a paid freelance, a paid part-time job. Let me just even at first get a volunteer one. So it's a worst case scenario. You will always get that. That I guarantee you will always get a volunteer role. The one that I also wanted to give special effort towards is freelancing, where you look at freelance sites that typically source clients, where jobs come from, another continent preferably, so that you'll be able to put on your profile. You will not just be able to, but you'll be able to talk about it when you're discussing with people. You could even be in your company, people are discussing about something, and you are saying, oh, this SAP and afford that you people want to move into. Oh, I worked part-time for one company in Canada, and that was what they used. And I saw there's a bit of difference between it. And they will just be looking at you like, have you not been in this same company for the last 6 years? When did you work with another company that, the moment you say you worked, not that I read, not that I did a training, people kind of open up. All their guards fall, all their limitations that they normally place around your opinion, even people who are above you or people who are, your colleagues who maybe your progress might be like a threat to theirs. They don't fight you anymore. They would rather come and ask you for advice of how they too can begin to get those international exposure. But the key thing I want to say is it makes you better. It makes you more suitable. It makes you more desirable. Hey, that's the right word, more desirable. So please put it in your strategy for next year to find those freelance, those volunteer roles that will get you to work for a company that is not in this continent. I'm even preferring to say not in this continent because you'll get the most value, even if it's a volunteer role where you're doing it at 10 hours per week, per month, or 5 hours per week. You can set your hours. That's the cool thing with all these volunteer platforms. And then if it's a freelance one too, again, you have control over your timing. And then the good thing is for everyone you do, it makes you getting another one easier. And at some point, you can be able to even make a lot of money. You can set your rate. Like for me, my rate is $85 per hour, and I get jobs. So it's because the start can be a bit like quite a lot of effort, but the moment you get into sync with it, it gives you more peace of mind. You learn things, and you know that this thing I'm learning, even though I cannot apply it in the company I'm working, I will go on a freelance site, I will add it to my skill set, and I will look for companies that need it, and I will be able to apply it there, So that's another way where this helps you to broaden your horizon and your skill set, because there are some things you might not be able to apply where you work, maybe because the knowledge requires tools that are too expensive for companies in Nigeria to buy, or it's just not popular here in our market and it's already popular in foreign countries. Then you find out that freelancing can be the only way you will get a hands-on experience. So please take this seriously as you go into the next year. And then this is another thing that people just completely omit. The more you keep learning, the more you keep finding that you don't know. So what happens is that it becomes a reinforcing process. You keep learning, and there's this thing we call the forever student. You're just learning and learning, and the more you learn, the more you think you need to learn. And the truth is, there's what we call the marginal, there's what we already know, diminishing returns. But I won't call it diminishing returns, because the more you learn, the more you know. But the truth is, it doesn't mean that you put all your energy towards learning. Also become a technical leader, become someone who speaks, who creates knowledge, to who you do. I don't know if you do trade trainer in your office, or people are talking and then you're able to talk about something that you learned that can help you. You are contributing in your own space too. You are not just absorbing and absorbing and absorbing. Whatever you learn, you're also sharing, you're writing articles, you are speaking at events, you are, you are creating, you're not just consuming. So the moment you become that, it helps you in knowing better, but not just in knowing better, it also makes it makes people aware that you know this thing. You can be learning on your weekends, at night, and nobody will know. Nobody, except something comes up and they ask you a question and you just answer and they're, wow, you know this. Nobody will really know. And what they don't know, what there's no visibility to, well, except you run your own business, I don't see how you get value out of it. But the moment you start contributing, you start speaking at conferences, at events, like even here, you can decide to take up a speaking slot, talk about something you've learned recently. We're all Nigerians here, nobody, and that's the thing about Nigeria. As much as we like to look at what's not going right, I tell you that I found it easier to speak to a Nigerian audience than to speak to a foreign audience. Why? We are less judging. That's one truth. I've been at events where I'm making mistake, right? And the people, they are older than me, they are more experienced than me. Some of them even know what I'm talking about better than me. But for the Nigerians, they still keep quiet. They still play humble. They still try to support me. Even when they want to correct me, they don't correct me in a way to bring me down. They correct me in a way to say, well, I appreciate your effort. I appreciate that you are trying to teach us, but also be aware of this. That's the thing I see a lot, and I now don't take it for granted anymore. But when you sometimes all these other foreign country audience, some people are just there to say that I know something you don't know, kind of. I see that approach a lot. So why am I bringing this up? Speaking in a Nigerian community can be your safe space to begin to gain confidence and then eventually begin to speak on the global stage, right? So please don't limit yourself. Don't say, I don't know something enough to speak about it or to create or to write about it. Nobody will ever get to that stage, So don't set yourself or a target that is not achievable. And don't deny yourself of the value that you get from becoming visible and sharing your knowledge. So be a creator, okay? And that's it. I'm coming gradually to the end. And so this is one part where when you ask people for what they plan to learn next year, very few people will tell you that they want to improve their communication skills or they want to take a course on something soft skill. Very few people do that. Yes, they appreciate it. They buy books that's on soft skill, but they don't spend on it as they spend on technical skills. And I think it's not the best. It's not balanced. The truth is, non-technical skills are just as valuable as technical skills. And the more you are progressing in your career, the more valuable they become, right? The ability to, okay, I'm going to give you I'll give you a mixture of personal and then some interesting explanations. Personal one first. On my own side, the biggest value skill for me right now, the skill that is going to be like a quantum leap for me, that once I get that skill, everything is going to change about me, about the company I'm with, my company I'm part of the management of. That skill is nothing technical. It is French language, French. The moment that my French is good enough that I can do training in French, I tell you, the businesses that are lined up for me to take up, it's an exaggeration, but it's an exaggeration I'm going to use. They are endless. So for me, I'm going to willingly spend more money and time on learning French than any of all the technical things that I know is valuable for me. Why? Because I have evaluated and I've seen that that is the next skill that is going to give me the biggest jump career, company, and a whole lot of even expansion-wise. Okay. But how many of us sometimes broaden our horizon to even look beyond all the technical skills that are always putting themselves in our frame and in our face? So I want you to just again stand back, evaluate where you want to be, right? And then look at people who are there and look objectively, what are the things they exhibit? What are the skills they have that you are lacking? Rather than keep looking at what is the next certification to do, what's the next technical training to go for. No, just stand back. Look at the people who are where you want to be, and then look at what they have. And you'll be surprised that most of these people your technical skills are more than theirs. So that means it's not the technical skill that should be your next big. It might even be networking. Though I won't say networking is a skill, but the truth is, it might just be networking that should be the next big quantum leap enabler for you. So just also think as you go into the next year about what non these operating procedures for your team, breaking things down, helping them to create a strong organizational culture, work ethic, process driven things within your team. That might be where you get the biggest jump for productivity amongst your team next year. It might not be doing automation and all the other things most of us think of. It might just be having in place processes so that bottlenecks are removed. Everybody knows, understand clearly what the process should be like and how they go about it, right? Not that you just want to keep automating and just bypassing your team member. You don't trust their confidence, their competent. You want to get a VBA person or do Power BI to automate everything completely. There are some places that, yes, that's it, but some other times you already have these people. It might just be being able to maximize the contribution from your team, like teamwork, putting in place, things to enable everybody to become contributive rather than just trying to eliminate their incompetence or their contribution completely. So essentially what I'm saying is also think about non-technical skills. Which ones require you to go for training? Which one requires you to get a consultant who will come and help you people ease into the processes that should happen and things that should maximize the teamwork and all of that. So it's not just about, Power BI, Excel, financial modeling. Okay. And then lastly, uh, I'm reading a book on motorcycle riding. Nowadays I begin to talk more about it because one thing I found out in if you ride a motorcycle and you it's not like you've always been riding it. You are learning it as an adult. You will find out that all the people who are writing about it, all the people who are teaching about it, they are completely different from the way they teach us how to drive. So they keep telling you that You have to always never assume that you know anything. Follow the rules. Never think that you are so good that you don't need to wear kit up. So there's this approach that they keep taking. So back to what I'm saying, there's a book I'm reading, and it's about people who do the racing, motorcycle racing. And guess what? Right? They say the most important thing is to be humble, to understand that there's a lot of things that are outside of your control. There's a lot of chance at play, right? That overconfidence is something that is going to actually do you no good. Yes, the more you know, the more you feel confident. But the more you feel confident, the more you should know there's a whole lot of other factors at play that are completely outside of your control, right? So you want to be humble. You want to understand that there are so many other things that no matter how good you are, no matter how whatever you're using to measure your skill level, no matter how high you are on it, you should never be so high on it that you become overconfident and you just be less humble and you just think you know it. You always have an opinion. When somebody's saying something, you already know where you're going to be in terms of position or whether yes or no. You know what's best already. No, that's a very wrong attitude. You should be always willing to learn more, always be watching out for things that you are not aware of at all. You should not act like I've been doing this for 10 years, for 15 years, for X number of years. I am an authority, or I know that this is the way things should be. It's not that you don't, but the moment you take that approach, you close yourself to more learning and you become a risk in itself. You become someone who is not going to be open to something new, who is not going to unlearn, because you have to be humble for you to even forget what you know and then become teachable and then keep learning. When we say keep learning, don't just restrict yourself to learning from people within the space. Some people even go as far as buying books on meditation or reading novels or reading something that is completely outside of the technical work or even life balance, or they just are open. Their mind is completely open to absorb information from different places, apply new information to old scenarios, old information to a new kind of thing. And that's how you make value for yourself and for your team. So that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if anyone has any comments, any questions, any suggestions as we wrap up. But I hope you are all preparing powerfully for the coming year. If you ask me, 2022 is, compared to this 2021, it's a year where we are all at least having a semblance of the uncertainty that started this year is not there. So it gives us a plus. What do I mean by it gives you this? Now you have a clarity of mind. You are able to plan better than the way we're able to plan into 2021. So you can at least take advantage of this December to take your best foot forward. Any comment from anyone? Any contribution? Any opinion? Any? If none, then I'm going to have to end the session. So in the meantime, please,
Hi,
we need
Mr.
more.
Michael.
Okay, great. Yes.
Sorry, my name is Deborah. My mic was muted. I have to
Okay.
say that this is quite an amazing section. This is the first time
Yeah.
I get to attend this, and I feel like a lot of things you're saying, I can relate to it. Quite amazing advice in terms of focusing on non-technical skills. I also realize from my own perspective that we tend to focus more on the technical skills, while non-technical skills also carry as much weight as technical skills when it comes to communication, presentation skills, and so on. Well,
Yes.
what I also took from the section is you have to look at where you want to be and also assess people that are doing whatever you want to do at the moment. I feel like that narrative, that perspective is something I've not really considered. Like, say you want to be the president of Nigeria. I'm just saying, for instance, I know that's pretty high, a high profile task here. You want to be the president of Nigeria. You can as well just look at and research and study about the things he has done so far, look at his career and all that. But I have a question though. I have a
Okay.
question in relation to in-demand skills. Yeah,
Okay.
we've talked about being a general, what is it, a specialist and a,
Generalist.
yes, thank you. And I believe that this is my own perspective that being a specialist kind of help you plan your career path better.
Mhm. Um, I can't hear you again. I hope it's not like you've muted yourself. Okay. Uh, okay. So somehow she's no longer audible. Okay. And she was about to say something about generalist and specialist. Okay. Yes, please, Harrison. I see your hand up.
Okay, good afternoon, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, I really thank you for the section. Right. So I want to ask a question.
Okay.
So, do you think as a finance person is maybe probably when you want to go into financial modeling and you want to scale yourself globally, want to become relevant, that picking up certification is more important than upgrading your skill. So, for example, talked about learning Python, learning programming language like Python, JavaScript, and the rest. Also, when you tend to look at this industry and a lot of profile, you see that you are seeing CFA, you are seeing a lot of these big certification. So for people like us that are coming up in the industry and that want to also go into finance in the future, looking at these two angles, so what would be your advice for us? Should we at the beginning focus more on certification like CFA, A, and the rest, or focus more on the technical skill part, like the personal skill and what we got to learn, like Excel, programming languages, data analytics, and those things. Thank you.
Okay. So that's a very close one, but I would say there's an advantage that we get in the finance space. As much as you might not think about it from that perspective, the certifications are very few. Compared to the IT space, those ones have it worse. You can do 50 certifications and you will still have 200 more that you will still see as potential ones to do, if you're in the IT space. But for us in the finance space, the certifications are not many. Yeah, some of them are difficult, but you know, think about it, the CFA. Some of us don't even know more than just the CFA, the FMVA, and the ones that are by the Financial Modeling Institute, FMI, right? So there are not so many that even if you decide to take the approach of going after these certifications, the FMVA and the FMI, you will get them in 1 year. In fact, maybe in 6 months you know, if you don't break the learning pattern. The CFA is the one that I know takes, a few, maybe like not less than 2 years. And it's not even like that. It's because of the curriculum. So it's just something that you have to space very well on the exam. So it doesn't mean that doing CFA means you don't do any other thing. Now, why am I even starting from there? Is to let you know that even if you decide to do certification, I don't think of it as hindering you from learning those other things. The funny thing is, if you are doing FMVA, if you are doing FMI, you will definitely need to learn Excel. You can't pass any of their own exams without being very, very good in Excel. So automatically, it's like you are killing two birds with one stone. Then the CFA one, uh, I don't have CFA, so I might not be the best person to give perspective, but this is what I know from my own evaluation of it and also from friends who have written. CFA by itself gives a lot of 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 stamp, a lot of weight to your profile that, if you have it, something you will definitely be very proud of. It's just that it's very expensive and it's also very time and resource consuming. That now people, when they weigh that effort and money, they want to be sure that it's not just prestige they want to get, that they will actually be able to use it to get a better paying job. That's where the dilemma comes in. So for those who are in the investment finance space, yes, sure. You have it, your career will bump up. Even if it doesn't go up with the current company you are in, it will help you to get the next job that you want to get. But then for those of us who are maybe in the corporate finance, you work with an FMCG, you work with a tech company, you are not in the investment finance space. It can be very tricky because the truth is you probably never use, two-thirds of everything you are learning in CFA. You will never use it in your work. And then at some point, you will even forget everything. And then you will just have the certification. You can be able to, use it to always put it on your profile and becomes a prestige thing purely, but you will not be able to monetize it as such. You'll find out that, yeah, that ability to use it to get a job increase or career progression might not be as big as it will have been for someone in the investment, or as deliberate as it has been for someone in the finance, investment finance space. So to wrap my answer up, I would say do both. It's just do the ones that will give you value. The certifications are not so much. So if you decide it's FMVA that you want, then do it. FMVA will teach you Excel, teach you investment analysis. If it's the AFM you want, then do it. Just scratch the itch. Uh, let it be done, and it's done. And also definitely learn the technical skills that you need. So don't let it be a this versus that. Okay, I see, Deborah, you're back. I think we lost you for some minutes. So yes.
Yes, I'm sorry about that network issues.
No
So
problem.
I was just trying to do a recap of what I'd learned during this
Okay.
section, and also to ask a question about AFM here.
Okay.
About the process. So if someone with a non-finance background or someone with just basic Excel skills, can the person still go ahead to learn AFM and take the exams? Like, is it still possible to do that within 6 months? I see that when I came back, it's also explaining something about certifications and all that.
Yes, definitely. All the AFM, the FMVA, 6 months. In fact, you could even do them in 3 months, but definitely 6 months is a very well spaced out time for you to achieve them, regardless of your level of Excel. So it's the thing about certification exams. Let me tell us the truth. As much as we we don't, whether you have it, you don't think of it that way, and whether you are training people, you will not be, we don't talk about it that way. It's a practice thing. It's like trying to write jam, right? You know that anybody, most of the exams that we wrote that kind of shook us, you find out that you perform better when you practice, not necessarily that when you know everything, but the intensity of practice towards the exam, practicing the exam type. We all know that JAM is OBJ versus WAEC, and so people, the approach you practice for it is different. So why am I saying all of this? There's it, which I would say maybe can be like 50%. You know it very, very well, such that if there was no certification, you could still say you meet all what the certification is saying that you are supposed to have, or that the certification is certifying you as having. So there's that 50% of I know all these things. Maybe I recently learned it, or I learned it, on the path to having the certification. But then there's the other 50% of I practiced to be able to pass the exam. Different exams just so that it can be easy for them to mark, for them to evaluate and all of that. They have a structure, they have a standardized scheme that even if you know the thing, I know financial modeling and I can still fail the certification. And it's not because that I can't create the model, but maybe I didn't create it the way they want, or time was against me. When I'm doing jobs, I don't tell clients that I will do your job in 1 day or even in 1 week, but the certification wants you to do the model in 4 hours. So you obviously will see that there's a divergence between reality and that. So to summarize my answer, yes, 6 months is good. What's the other thing you asked about? Is there anything I've missed out of?
No, there's nothing you've missed out. And one other thing in terms of being a specialist, I think from more reason why we focus on technical skills rather than non-technical skills, I might be wrong, is just to get the exposure, like just to beat the competition out there. And that also links to what you're trying to say, like doing the exam is totally different from practical experience. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you too. And to everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. So at this juncture, I will have to wrap up the session because we have another session coming up at 4 p.m. and I need to go and do some pre-work to that too. But let me just share with us. The person is sharing on Excel skill, on Excel tips. He works with the PwC. He's into the finance space, so it could be an opportunity for you to also maybe ask him questions and maybe see some things relating to how people in his space use Excel. So yeah, join us at 4 p.m. for this. Let me see if I can. The direct joining link and the RSVP link, I've sent them. So thank you very, very much, and bye-bye. Have a very wonderful Sunday. So stopping this session right now. Goodbye.